having Chuck and Stain.
Hello.
All right, I don't even know where to begin. We're here at Pony Tracks Ranch, I believe so. Yeah, so Chuck was saying it's 450 acres. We drove up in the sweet Humvee, and it's pretty cool because you pull up and you see, you know, artillery shells laying around, and that's the first teaser over there. I gotta admit, I know next to nothing about tanks, but pretty awesome as a sneak peek. I mean, just look. What? Are you kidding me? All right, let's go head inside here in a minute. We'll see what we find. Military Vehicle Technology Foundation with pride. I think it's a British guy though, so I'm not sure what to think about that. But amazing.
Okay, so you had the background, so we can launch straight into tanks, can't we? Any of you guys tankers or ex-tankers or military people? Okay, good. An hour. So that made it too slow. It was great against Italian tanks, but then when the Germans showed up in April of '41 in Libya, this thing was outclassed, and it was withdrawn pretty much from service. Most were shipped to New Guinea and Burma to fight the Japanese, who had no tanks of any value whatsoever. Another drawback to it was it could only ever fire solid shot from its gun, which meant it was okay against other tanks, but totally useless against pillboxes or emplacements and stuff like that. So there's a crew of 4 in this thing. There's 3 men in that turret, and there's 1 man driving this thing down here. The blue paint. Western Europe's full of rivers running north to south. They wanted a vehicle that could approach those rivers, go straight in and come across. So it floats immediately. Because if you displace enough air, you can float anything, okay? Interesting feature on this, it has combat damage from the Vietnam War, where the North Vietnamese used this as a spray of machine gun bullet holes across the body of the tank, right there. So the Russians used this vehicle up into the 1970s, and then it's been phased out. They no longer use it. It has a 76mm gun on it. It's a reconnaissance vehicle, so it's not supposed to be a tank. It's supposed to go out there, find where the enemy is, fire off a shot, and then run like hell. That's pretty much it. It propelled itself through the water by drawing water through these vents on the back, and there's 2 hydrojet propulsion units out the back of the vehicle, and that's how it pushes itself through the water, and it also steers itself. If you look on the back, there's 2 circular hatches, and by controlling how open each of those hatches were, you could control how much water was getting pushed out the back. Now, on the arse end of the tank, look down low. There you go. Bow plane to fold up and break the surface of the water. If you don't have a bow plane, the wave is just going to flood over your vehicle and sink you. So there we go.
That's what the one that shoots it or something? American type of thing?
No, that was the DT Shermans. We'll talk about those later. Well, it's a boat, right? So boat people have poles. They like that.
It's a boat.
And that's a boat pole. You know, you come near the bank. New technology rushed into a design without properly field testing any of the design. And so when it got put out into service, there were huge problems with it. The problem started with the fact that it had to be air deliverable, which meant that the weight had to be kept down. To keep the weight down, they made the hull out of aluminium armor. And the turret is steel, but the body is aluminium. That kept the weight to 17 tons. Next problem was it had to fire the Shillelagh anti-tank missile. There's a whole stack of them down there, which meant that the gun launcher tube had to be 152mm in diameter. So far, so good. To sight the missile, you had to use an infrared optical device that you see right there. But it was discovered that if you shined a flashlight directly into that optical device, it didn't work. And it was often pointed out, if the Russians ever attacked from the east with the sun rising behind them, you'd never be able to aim the gun and fire it. Next problem was the general said, well, it can't just fire a missile, it's got to fire, you know, a big bang shell, right? High explosive round. So they produced a 152mm diameter howitzer round to fire from it. The problem with what was such a massive round firing was, that's a lot of recoil on a light vehicle. And when the gun fired, the entire vehicle would come up off the ground and crash back down again. And the concussion from that action wrecked the electronics that fired the missile. So in this vehicle's entire service life, the 2 systems never ever worked properly together. You couldn't fire a regular round and then try and fire a missile out of it. If you directed the turret to the side of the vehicle and fired a howitzer round, it would blow the vehicle over. They were shipped to Vietnam, where they were used when they didn't fire missiles, didn't fire shells. All they fired was a massive shotgun blast of little plastic flechettes into the jungle. One is the one back east, stopping them building the new museum. The other lawsuit is centered around this tank here, which is a Panzer IV. So in the auction that was happened in 2014, the auction was full of a lot of doubles, a lot of junk. They had to put some ringers into the auction, and this was one of the ringers that they've installed. It was put in the auction and they asked an asking price of $2.5 million. Paul Allen from Microsoft, he bid on it, but did not bid up to that price. The auction finished, and the Collins were super happy because they didn't have to sell it, and they'd made enough money to build their new museum. Well, apparently Paul Allen, after the auction, approached the auction company and said, I want it. I'll wire transfer you $2.5 million. Can I have the tank? And the auction company, of course, who are paid on commission, said, yeah, sure, we'll take the money. He took the money, he returned to the owners and said, great, guess what? We sold the Panzer IV. And the owners were like, no, the auction's over. Give him his money back. And of course, his response was, no, I paid for this. You know? The Germans put their faith in Panzer IIIs as a tank-to-tank. They quickly found out this is the one they wanted, and this is the one they ended up producing the most of out of that series of tanks. I think the production run was only 9,000. What have you got? You've got 3 men in the turret, you have a machine gun radio operator in here, and you have a driver in there. Where do you think we found... Anything else?
M4A1 Sherman.
Correct. There were 6 A1, A2, A. There was 8 up to 6.
Cheap, just like the grease gun.
Looked like fairly heavy armor.
Fast to build.
Correct. You've covered the 2 key components of why they were good. They were easy to mass produce, easy to operate, basically. And they were the best thing we could come up with. Because remember, the Sherman was designed when America was not in the war. America built this, designed this thing in the 40 and 41. So they looked at the war from their perspective, and they built a tank that could combat the conditions they saw out there. So guys, look at the suspension system on this tank and tell me what that reminds you of.
Train.
Look, he's not even American and he spots it. You're absolutely right.
Like
the
a train.
train company was given the task of producing a suspension system for the new tank. And they had no idea what a tank was or how to build it, but they knew how to make bogies for trains, so they just adapted what they knew and they built these.
It's incredible.
Here, and that's what you see, okay? It's an adaptation of existing technology. That's how they got away with it. All right, I told you the Sherman was easy to mass produce, mechanically reliable. It weighed 30 tons. Deliberately, so that dockyard cranes could pick it up on these hooks and load it onto ships. That's as far as it goes, really, in terms of what was good about it. The tank was fundamentally flawed. Problem being was it was undergunned and under-armoured. Let's look at the guns first. Look at 1 barrel, 2 barrels, and a Panther barrel. What do you see?
Short, tapered, no muzzle brake.
They are all, exactly, thank you. They are all 75mm caliber guns, but the length of the barrel is longer.
Concrete, probably, you almost feel like it.
German Panzer.
It's a mixture of concrete and sawdust. It's called Zimmerit. The Germans painted it on their tanks for about a year, 43 to 44, because they themselves had a magnetic anti-tank mine that you could stick on a tank, and the Russians also had one. Wow. But they didn't stick with it for long. They added too much weight to the vehicle and added production time. So by the end of the war, they wanted to do it. But you know, it was a nice idea. So here we are. This is the pride of the collection, the Mark V Panther tank. You know, most of the tanks in the collection are within your price range. This thing, you probably get 22 million bucks for this thing. It's the tank that Jacques pulled from a swamp in Poland. It had driven across the Nida River in late 44. It froze across the frozen river, and it had fallen through the ice and was abandoned by the crew and left.
Question, what is this?
Barbed wire cuts.
Really?
Yeah.
Stan's getting a good view.
So the crew, like I say, blew the turret up and they just left this vehicle. After the war, of course, scrap merchants went around the battlefields of Europe pulling out scrap and cutting it all up. Well, this is left. It was too difficult to get out the swamp. So, but by 1993, the value of these things had shot up. The Germans made 6,000 of them. By the mid-90s, there's only 23 of them left in the world. So this was worth pulling out of the swamp and bringing back here to restore. But remember, all they brought back was a completely rusted out and gutted shell. There was nothing. All the interior was gone.
And nicely
And so
restored,
Doug
isn't it?
spent 5 years and $several million pulling it apart and restoring it to mint condition. If he couldn't find authentic parts, he went back to the company that made it and had them manufacture new parts for it.
Oh my God.
The company that made the tank was the MAN company, and the engines were made by Maybach. And they still make trucks in Germany. There was an American eccentric truck and tank designer called J. Walter Christie, who made tanks and tried to sell them to the US Army. His tanks, his idea was, he wanted a tank where you could take the tracks off and the tank could drive out on the freeway, 50, 60 miles an hour, stop, put the tracks on, and go off-road. That was his concept. What that meant was, he had a kick-ass suspension system he designed for the Christie tanks. Tank of the Second World War, I guess at the end, by that point, there was no real tank-to-tank fighting going on anymore. Germans were beating.
Beautiful.
But there is a beautiful black and white combat footage on YouTube called Panther versus Sherman versus Pershing, or the Cologne incident it's called. Black and white combat footage of the 3 tanks in the German city of Cologne. And the Panther sees the Sherman, one shot, boom. It's lots of these tanks burning up for the same reason. This was filmed in Aleppo about 7 months ago in the Syrian war, and there's 3 T-72s there of this tank. The ISIS guys get on the roof with an RPG and they fire down. And penetrate the engine compartment and then ignite the ammunition under the turret. The explosion blows a man out of the hatch onto the ground and he escapes, but the other 2, well, you'll see what happens. So let me just jump where they're on the roof. What? So this came out in 1972 and still was manufactured up until the 1990s. But they're everywhere. I just need to look for something. Need to watch this movie. Right, penetration on the back. Okay, now the ammunition burns. Watch. That's all those blocks of propellant you saw being loaded. But the lucky dude is here. He gets up, his pants are being blown off and his jacket's over his head, but he runs away. Because that hatch was not locked, so the blast took him out of that hatch onto the floor. The other 2 that were in there, well, they're not going. And now if you continue watching, it burns and all the shells then start to go off and blah. Yeah, they're getting out. Well, they made the mistake of fighting in a city. To me.
We just got into the second room. I mean,
So
just
when you're trapped inside a
incredible.
tank for 24 hours, what do you think they use to go to the bathroom? Oh, their helmets. So early Second World War, the US Army had tanks coming on board and the crews were getting concussions.
I think I'm going to lose my battery soon, so I got to film while I can.
So they had no tank helmet design. What they did have was American footballers were using tanks. That's what the Germans said, my hand to God. So what happened was, the church was first used in August of 1942 on a raid on the French port of Dieppe, which is in northern France. Why? Because America had just got involved in the war, and the Americans, God bless them, they were like, gung-ho, let's go back and invade Europe, let's do it tomorrow. And the British said, well, hang on, the Germans have fortified the coastline, it's not going to be a walkover. If we do go back to Europe, we've got to capture a port, otherwise we're not going to be able to feed and supply our armies.
This is an M60 that was actually used by the U.S. in the Gulf War,
No,
given
it's
to
not.
the owner
It's,
by the Marine Corps.
It's a flashlight. 2 million candle power. Right up until the 1980s, battlefield tactics meant that one tank would illuminate the enemy and then everyone else would fire at that same tank. because infrared was not good enough. It didn't work.
He used
good
to
enough.
drive over cars with it, which is where you get all the scratches from.
Barrel technology. What's the lump in the middle of the barrel for?
No idea.
So I told you at the beginning of the tour, the shells outside the door, they are Battleship Iowa, the 60-inch naval shells, okay?
Just amazing.
So the Battleship Iowa in '89 was firing off guns, current number 2, loading one of those shells up the barrel, loading 5,000 explosives in the barrel,
If this just ends abruptly, it's because my battery died. But this is amazing. Thanks to the military technology. There's a card or a link in the video description. Folks that support all this.
The stormtroopers are running around with World War I Lewis guns, the big tube-like gun they've got. That's a World War I machine gun the British made. So.
I said that this looks like Star Wars, and he corrected me that no, Star Wars copied this Russian thing, which is probably a fair point.
There was a crushing sound and a big old.
Check out inside of this. It's just so cool.
It all came from the night site closing and opening their doors out there. They record.
What are they?
And then they also run some of the waypoints.
Omni tool and die, 50 cal parts.
Machine gun, ammunition boxes, so on and so forth. And that's it.
Cool. I think we're done with the tank tour. Amazing. Again, thank you very much to the Military
You're
Vehicle
welcome.
Technology Foundation. Phenomenal educational tour guide. Just when I thought the tour was over, we're up here in the workshop.
The next place we'll go is the shop where all these big tools are coming out of. And we're
Well, actually-
gradually doing it over here.
Actually, sorry, no, this is just the one shop. We're going to the other shop in a minute. Oh my God.
3 days, this building only has
They have a whole train. I don't even know where to begin. A whole train system here that you can actually ride. Pretty substantial. But this, I guess, is just the wood shop. So, save my battery here. Hopefully, we can make it over to the metal shop.
Joey, look at the gear.
Check it out. 5-ton. At least I think it's a 5-ton. A lot of similarities to the Humvee. You got like the blackout drive option, similar start switch, but a lot more gear. I mean, the thing has a power takeoff, more complicated transmission. Yeah, what do those say? Differential, heat pull, a defrost maybe, not differential. Fresh air, throttle, yeah.
Blower.
And then turret. Yes. Let's get up there. Actually, that's not going to be so easy. Slide out.
Oh yeah, throw me out of the box.
I'm going with you.
Got a 50 cal mounted back there.
I'm gonna go in the back.
Let's see if we can get in the up here.
The barrels, all the barrels, all the parts on the outside are all real. It's a block. The receiver, it's just a so it's in the cockpit up there.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Head guy of the Highway Patrol in Northern California.
Check that out. We should be able to unlock the turret and turn.
Give him this car. So they got
There we go.
cars everywhere. Johnny, you up there?
I'm up here.
What year is it?
Look at that. My turret pivoting skills are mediocre at best right now. There we go.
Look out behind you. They're coming from
They're coming.
behind.
Yeah.
They're coming from behind.
The Germans. There we go.
There, John.
There we go.
You just pivot with your feet. You gotta use your feet for everything.
You know, I gotta think there's a right way to do that because this is not
It
good.
doesn't feel good, does it?
No.
When you end up busting out the windshield or something.
And the guy says,
Look at that.
"Oh, it's a Neil?" He says, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, this is Tom Hanks, and I'd like to see your helmet clip." Tom Hanks. So the guy calls back and he says, Hey, you're Allison.
This is a aftermarket tweaked Humvee we're about to take a ride in. Beautiful from the exterior, I gotta say, beautiful. A little bit different than the one back home. All right, there's the exterior tour. Appropriate American flag there, I like that.
It's got the stock motor, stock transmission, put a Allison 5-speed and a Duramax.
There's the interior. Apparently supposed to haul butt, so let's apparently supposed to haul ass, so we'll see here in a minute. So we're just driving, what town are we in?
We're in Woodside.
We're in Woodside, California, but this is crazy. I mean, it's beautiful, and apparently we just went by the street where Steve Jobs lived for most of his life. I guess not Larry Page, Ellison. Oracle, who's not a poor individual, lives around here as well. So just kind of bumming around the back roads. We have not consumed any bicycles yet, but we've only been in the car for about 10 minutes.
Day ain't over.